Om Shanti and good afternoon. We are looking at some elements of the Murli that we heard this morning, which is the Avyakt Murli. And on Wednesdays, we see the Sakar Murli. On Sundays, the Avyakt Murli. And this one has a very interesting connection between truth and fortune. So I'd like to go into that a little bit for a few minutes, and then we can have some questions if you have any. So first of all, he talks about himself as truth. That means God is truth. And people use that expression. They say God is truth, but they don't know what exactly they mean by that, or what exactly someone else might mean by that. So, and what does God mean when he says, I am truth? In Christianity, Jesus Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So that's another one. And then he talks about the age of truth. So that's narrowing it down. So the Father, who is the true Father, establishes the world of truth. And he does it by telling the truth. And so what is the truth? And when you say truth, then it is in comparison with untruth. So if God is true, then whatever is not God may not know the truth. But let's go further into what else he says about truth. So the true Father establishes the world of truth, and the description, this word praise actually means description. So the details of God are that in terms of relationship, it's a true relationship. And when you talk about a person being true, sometimes you think about that means that they are loyal. And sometimes you think about it as meaning that they are honest. So there is a connection between a loyalty and honesty. And then there is the idea that if someone is not true, they will betray you. And that they will pretend to be one thing and in the end turn out to be something else. And then what you experience is disappointment. And that's the mild form of the experience of betrayal. And if you experience betrayal in a very powerful form, then you get a correspondingly powerful emotion of betrayal. And people are very worried about getting betrayed. And so we need to take a look at this concept of betrayal in that respect as well. One thing that happens, which is also mentioned in all the scriptures of all the religions, really, who are theistic religions. And the theistic religions do talk about God becoming present. And then when God becomes present, there are many false gods around. So people are looking for God, but they may find God or they may find false gods, and it's quite difficult to distinguish if you got the right one. And this is like looking for a needle in a haystack made of other needles. So you have to be really good that you know which needle you're looking for in that big pile of needles. So there are certain criteria that you can check it against. And of course, the main criteria is that God is without a body. And another aspect that is said about God is no human being can be God. So if there's any human being who says that they're God, then you know right there that they're not God because they're a human being. Now, the difficulty for God is to communicate with human beings while not being a human being, and yet while being accessible. And so he says that I can be accessible in this way by letting you know that just as I am incorporeal and invisible, you are too. You're also incorporeal and invisible, and you have bodies and I don't. So I have to communicate with you through another body. And that makes it very difficult, because through which body should God talk? He says, well, I will talk through the body of that soul, which is the highest out of all souls, in the last of the end of many, many births, which makes the instrument completely unrecognizable. So the recognition of God is not very easy. And there are quite a lot of people who recognize God through different means. And the most tangible thing from my angle of God is what he says. And so, again, this connects with the idea of God being true. So the true father, also called the true teacher. So he will give you teachings which are correct. And what's the difference between the relationship of father and the relationship of teacher is basically the teacher will teach information, but the father is the owner of the information. And this is the legacy that he gives to someone who enters into the relationship of father and child with God. And so this inheritance of truth or true information. And in India, it is called the knowledge of the creator and the creation. So this is the expression, very specific expression, that when God gives you information, it will be the information about the creator and the creation. So the creation means the entire history of the world, which is the history of the humanity, whole history of humanity from the beginning through the middle to the end, and also the geography of the world. So all the various different things that happen geographically as well as politically. And so we can say socio-politically. And then he will say, I am the creator and you are my creation. And so in that sense, you become the sons of God. And then he says, I invite you to be my students. So sit down and listen. And then the third relationship that he talks about in terms of being true is the true Satguru. So Satguru means true guru. And there are in India tons of people who call themselves the Satguru. So there are criteria. What is the definition of Satguru? So the first definition of the Satguru is that he will take you from where you are to nirvana. And if he does that, then that's success. It's a good sign that he is. If he doesn't, then it means he cannot be Satguru. And it's impossible for a human being to take the rest of humanity to nirvana. That is out of the question, because This is something that is outside the range of a human being, and it's also outside the range of someone who is not God. So anyone who's a human being calling themselves Satguru cannot be a Satguru. But not that many people know these criteria. And so one of the things that the teacher teaches us, and which you can also find out from other sources, is these criteria. The other thing is that the consequences of true information is a world of truth. And that is called Sat Yuga, which is an age of truth. And then he says, I will teach you how to do the karma that enables you to go to the world of truth in a position where you are a master. And so one of the things that is said about God is God will make you into the King of Kings. So that's a criteria. Now, how do you become a king? In this day and age, nobody really wants to become a king. And it's very unlikely that you'll become a king because we don't have that system. It is a world where people become presidents and prime ministers, but not kings. In ancient times, if somebody was an emperor, they could make somebody into a king. And then there's different categories of royals. And so one of the other things that is said in the theistic religions is God creates a kingdom of heaven. Nobody ever talks about the Republic of Heaven. Never heard about that, right? So God does not create a republic. A republic is a Latin word which means res publicum. This is the Latin, and it means it is a thing made by the public. That's the meaning of republic. Whereas a kingdom is made by God. So if a kingdom is made by God, then we have to know how and when and under what circumstances and all the rest of the details. And so this is why we have to have a school where the true teacher sits us down and says, okay, sit down every day for your entire life, and I will tell you detail by detail what is needed so that you understand everything properly and so that you become what is the consequence of studying this material. And so this is very, very unusual. And yet here it is. So he talks about in this Murli the 4 kinds of wealth. And this is absolutely connected with truth. So sometimes people talk about black money. And black money is money that is acquired on the black market through the dark internet. There's all this blackness connected with certain kind of money. And you can earn that kind of money if you do extremely illegal activities. And so if you want to get a lot of black money and you go on the dark internet, the kind of things that you're interested in are drugs and prostitution and weapons. That's basically what you get. And you can also buy body parts because sometimes people need a transplant and they can't get one. So then you can get somebody who chops little pieces off unsuspecting people and sells them, like eyes or kidneys or something. And that's a really dark kind of way of earning money. So this is false money. And so when you acquire money in that way, that money has a very dark, negative karma connected with it. And of course, when you are a regular, normal person like we are, you're pretty much unlikely to be somebody who deals in that kind of black money. But there are other things which are harmful to people but legal. Like, for example, in the practice of Raj Yoga, we want to connect true with pure. Like if it's called true gold or pure gold, that means there's no alloy mixed into it. And by extension, if you're talking about a true person, that true person doesn't have any hidden agenda. They don't have any other purpose. And what you see is what you get. The inside and the outside is the same. That's a true person. And so that has that attribute of transparency. And so then if somebody is real, we also use the word real for true. If somebody is real, it means they're not fake. If somebody is fake, they won't be able to keep it up indefinitely. So one of the attributes of true is that it remains true forever. So, for example, in a court of law, if they want to find out if somebody's telling the truth, they will ask them to tell their story many, many times. And if they find that there are internal contradictions or the story changes, that will be considered as a sign that the story is not true, because if it's true, you'll tell it the same way every time. And so we know a few criteria about truth, and that is that it doesn't change. And what is also known about God is said to be immutable. And immutable is another Latin word that means doesn't change. And so whatever God says will not change. Whatever God is will not change. Nothing will happen to God. For us, things happen to us and it changes us. And also the soul passes through time, it passes through many experiences, and the soul deteriorates. And so there is a difference between a human soul and the soul of God, because the soul of God remains like that for all time. And then he says something interesting, which I don't think is known. And that is that contained inside the soul of God is the knowledge of the Creator and the creation. So people do say that God will give the knowledge of the Creator and the creation, but they don't generally think that the being of God contains that. And in his words, he says, my sanskaras are to tell you the knowledge. So his role on the earth is to come heavily disguised and speak. And whoever hears the truth recognizes it by different aspects. So one thing they say about truth is it has a ring. The ring of truth. So if it sounds right, it may or may not be right. But if it sounds right, you will say, well, it sounds right. And that will give you a reason to investigate further. And so if you encounter truth as a collection of pieces of information that sound right to you, then you have to investigate it and check it from every angle imaginable to find out if it holds water. So we use this expression, holds water. That means it's like solid, it doesn't leak. It stands up. You can attack it from any angle of argument, And if it holds up, then you say, okay, it passed through the many tests. So with gold, which you want to know if gold is real gold, then what you do with it is you put it in hydrochloric acid. And if it fizzes, it's not real gold. And if it doesn't fizz, it probably is. And you subject these metals and jewels to different tests to find out if they're real or not. In the same way, a real diamond or a fake diamond, a real person or a fake person. And so we have, it is normal for a person to have access to ways to check if something's real or not, if a person is real or not. So when you enter into a relationship with someone, you would do according to if someone looks good. And then you check them out for a while and see if they stay as they initially presented themselves. And if they turn out to be something else, then you will say, what I thought you were, you turned out to be something else. So have a nice day. Thank you very much. And then you would say, I was deceived. So it's very normal for people to deceive each other because why would you deceive somebody is if you want something from them that they wouldn't give you if they would see the reality, because they'd say, oh, you know. And so we see, we need to distinguish between appearances and reality, but things start off with as appearances. And by sitting with that thing or that person or whatever, that situation, you find out if it is what it presented itself or it turns out to be something else. And then you say, well, it's not. And that is betrayal. You feel betrayed. When someone who you thought was for real ends up not, you feel betrayed. Someone who you thought was loyal to you ends up not, you feel betrayed. Someone was telling you something that they say is true, you know, buy my product, this is really good, and it ends up being a scam or something, and you may lose a lot, especially money, you may lose a lot of money, and then you really get upset about that. And so the world that we live in is called the world of falsehood. So these four kinds of fortune that he talks about in the Murli today are connected with our history over many, many births, and to what extent our action has been according to the principles of truth, true behavior. And the four areas that he talked to us about is, first of all, money. So what is your relationship with money? And money is financial wealth, but it's not just only dollars and things like this, but it is that in your life, do you have food, shelter, transportation, clothing, equipment, all the things that you need so that life in a body is manageable, because you need certain things for your body. And also you need wealth to do what you want to do. And to fulfill your purpose in life, you have to do something. And so if you are a photographer, well, you can't do photography if you don't have a camera and if you don't have all the other things that go along with it. And then you can do that. So you need wealth. And you need to be able to grow your wealth. And so do you have that? And if you have to struggle, or if you don't have, it means that you must have done something which was against the principle of pure karma, because not having enough means you're suffering, you're paying. It's a kind of punishment. So it's a result of negative karma. So a true person is someone who does everything according to true principles of karma. And then the other thing he talked about was your body. And so you have a body and you have your sense organs. A lot of people in this world, they wear glasses, or they have contact lenses, or they have laser surgery. And so what did you look at over all your births such that there was damage to your eyes? What did you listen to such that you became deaf? All of these are connected with karma. And some people have heart problem, some people have liver problem, kidney problem, the circulation problem, cancer. So many things go wrong with the body. And then how well do you handle that? Are you afraid of pain? Are you able to handle pain? Are you able to not be afraid you will die, or afraid this will happen, that will happen? Or are you able to manage it well, you see? Because sooner or later we do have to leave the body. So there has to be some cause of death. Most people die from something. It's very rare to find a person who says, okay, I think today is the right day and I'll see you later, and poof. That happens, especially for people who do very heavy religious practice. But most people, they die from some reason, some accident, some illness, something. And some people die of old age where the systems just shut down. And so your relationship with your body, especially in time of illness, is an indicator of your health. And then he talked about your mind, your mental health, because with your mind, the quality of your mind and how you use your mind and your thinking will determine how you feel about yourself. Are you with yourself? Are you happy? And some people in materialist consciousness, they will think of happiness as connected with, do you have money and all the things that money can buy? But he's made happiness different from that. Happiness is, do you maintain a state of equilibrium, serenity, independence? You're able to feel good about who you are and what you are, regardless of what happens, regardless of what people say, and that you just stay easy. And not very many people can do that, because we go into the swings of feeling good and feeling bad. And a lot of people, they get depressed. And many people, they are afraid, and they have phobias and all sorts of discomfort of the mind, and all the way to severe mental illness. So this is also karma. How you use your mind, how you think about yourself, how you think about other people, because the thoughts that you have, these are actions. So karma is in thought, in words, how you talk to everyone, and how you listen to what other people say, how you process information. So all of this is karma. And then the fourth area that he took up is, Are you fortunate in relationships? So it's a skill to know how to live with other people, how to develop trust and build a relationship, and to understand, what is the give and take that produces a sustainable relationship. And, these days, people are looking for life partners. And so when you're looking for a life partner, you're looking for compatibility. And I think a lot of betrayal takes place in relationships, and even in the matter of business and finance and all of that. It's very much connected with relationships. So it's about trust. It's about honoring yourself and honoring the other. You may have a significant relationship, a life partner, or you may be part of a group of people, an extended family with whom you have several relationships, all of which are significant. You have your parents, your children, your spouse, your friends. And so you may have a few people that are the most important to you, and then also some business relationships. And if you do your interaction well, then this is a great fortune, because the human being is not somebody who functions well in isolation. It's good to be able to handle isolation for things like COVID restrictions and other things. And you need alone time, and you need time with significant others, and you need to be able to manage when there's a lot of people around, everyone jostling for their space and so on. So the wealth of relationships is very important. And so he said that if you are a person who's motivated by truth, and you connect into the true father, teacher, Satguru as your significant connection with the divine, with the supreme, and then the proof of that is how you act. And there may be times where you are betrayed as a person who is doing everything correctly, but when you are betrayed, you manage it easily. Say, okay, got the lesson, move on. It won't be worse than that. But for others who become dependent, and then they demand things in their relationships, they themselves will not be true, but they demand everybody else is true. So that becomes a dysfunctional relationship or a catastrophic relationship. And then that's no wealth. And that's a bad relationship, a relationship that is impoverished. It doesn't have the give and take. So in terms of karma in relationships, it is said that you want to keep the give and take equitable, so it doesn't get heavy on one side and light on the other side. So when the relationship goes like that, the give and take is equal, and it's non-dependent, because your main source of your support is your connection with truth. And you will not give away your power, assume somebody else has to be the truth and you don't. All of these things have to be real and equitable and correct. But if a person isn't honest, they will fudge these things. And this is where the appearances, the performances become misleading, and then they end up in some kind of betrayal, and then the person is very unhappy. But, it is said life is a university. And so we're learning all the time. So Daddy Genki used to say that if you have the attitude that everything that happens from the beginning of your life all the way to the end is an opportunity to increase your understanding, to learn something, to continue to grow all the way to the end, then that's really good, because that's a relationship with life that is also true. Of course, the Murli had many, many elements in it, but just this struck me that this connection between God as truth and these four kinds of fortune that are the consequences of us paying attention to our action, our karma being true in all these areas of the body, the mind, relationships, and wealth. Shanti.
How do you know if a karma is created or being settled in Brahmin life? For example, someone is getting angry with you and vice versa.
Okay. So you get angry with something or someone. So what is happening is that something they did or said triggered something in you, and you're reacting to that, and by being on some level violent, because angry, there's hundreds of different formats of anger. But this is typical, someone irritates you, you get irritated. So what's happening in a straightforward situation like that is that yourself is oriented to sense perception. And so the irritating thing gets to you and you get irritated. So it will provoke the emotion of anger. And so then you have a few options. Some people say, well, a good thing to do in a case like that is to delay expressing what you feel. Some people, if a feeling of anger is triggered by something, they'll immediately express it, and they will do something which would be harmful to the other person, take revenge or something like that. So that what you do, if it is harmful to someone, would be you creating a karma. The other person irritating you, it's not necessarily that they're doing something bad, but whatever it is they're doing, it's not convenient for you, doesn't suit you, you don't like it. And that may not be their problem, that may be your problem. And so then they're quite innocent. They did something neutral, but you took it badly, and then you will do something which would be a negative karma against them, and you will blame them and say, you made me angry. Actually, you got angry all by yourself. And so, but you didn't want to take responsibility. So that's your weak action, you can say. Now, there's other situations where, for example, you meet somebody for the first time and you immediately don't like them for no reason. It happens, right? I really don't like this person. Why not? No reason. So that would be an indication that there's some outstanding account because otherwise you have to have a reason to have a strong feeling. And if you just meet somebody who's quite neutral and perfectly normal, and you have a strong feeling, this is an indicator of some outstanding karma. And so it's very important for you to click that, oh, there's some karma, I have to be careful here, because wherever there is outstanding karma, maybe some mutual violence going on or something, who knows, because it's from another lifetime. And so you have to settle outstanding karma, and you can't really know so easily if it's you who's in debt to them or they're in debt to you. Sometimes it's fairly clear, but a lot of times it's mutual indebtedness, because there's been a give and take of negative activity. And when you encounter that person, it wants to continue and escalate the problem. And so in that case, you would apply your powers of tolerance and accommodation and keep cool and don't react, because you really don't know enough about the situation, but you can detect that there is something. And a wise move would be to keep distance, maintain your principles of life, and don't go against them, regardless of different provocations. There's a good policy in karmic interaction. And then there may be somebody who finds everything you do terribly offensive, and they're reacting all the time and overreacting. And then you have to understand that this is some problem that they have. And I would say that it's fairly good to not engage, because it gets very complicated if you do that. The problem with these kinds of situations where you can understand that it's something to do with some ancient past karma is that you have no idea what it was. And so what we learn in Raj Yoga is these and these and these are lines. Do not cross these lines, because if you do cross these lines, you'll get yourself into trouble. And if you don't cross these lines, you'll be protected from energies that want you to cross the lines and get caught up in some current karma, which is a continuation of some ancient karma. And then what we also learn is that you must do meditation, because when you do meditation, you're taking energy, you're taking strength from God. And that strength takes the form of the different powers of yoga, which allow you to be neutral, more neutral in the face of different kinds of provocation. So that is a good thing. And the other thing that you have, which is not really anything to do with anger, is that sometimes you have a karmic connection with someone, which is because of a history of positive interaction with that person, and then you will meet them again. And there will be not a negative karmic account to settle, but a positive karma that may continue. But again, keep within the lines of pure action to make sure that whatever it was, it carries on being mutually beneficial and equitable. And then you're on safe ground, because we don't know who is who. We're all in disguise. We're just in the current body, and we don't know who we knew in the past or what it was all about. But what we have at the present time is good guidelines. And then we also have the idea that this is the time when you create the best possible good fortune. So this is why we have this idea of Shrimat, the directions of God. So interact with everyone as these are your spiritual brothers. And so the relationship between spiritual brothers needs to be love and regard. So keep the love and regard going and don't get caught up in dramas as far as possible. And practice and use these weapons of detachment and maintain your dependency on God, not on people. And whatever people do, good or bad, you try to keep yourself in a state of equilibrium so that you don't, you flex with the situation, but you don't go into these heavy ups and downs, which put you at risk of getting yourself into trouble by doing some negative karma. And then you become a victim of circumstances. Whereas when you practice in this way, you can keep yourself as more of a master of circumstances and keep the flow where everything is going well. And for that, he pointed out in this Murli, you need to make sure that you're not motivated by selfish desires. Because the selfish desire means that you're trying to use a person to fulfill something that you should actually be using God for. Because he says, I'm here, and I've got everything you can imagine and then some. And so use me. But if you don't, and you try and use somebody else, you get yourself into trouble. But use me, you will not get in trouble from me because I'm God, so, I've got everything and I know what to do. I won't get into trouble. Have a relationship with me. And he kind of ensures that you also don't get into trouble, because you try and get into trouble with God, he will pay attention like that. It's quite good.
In similar lines, there are two questions. What if you initially like them, all goes well, but then the relationship declines and becomes muddy?
Always like that.
And another question is from Facebook. If the other person is angry, how do we know if we are settling or it's a new karma? So 2 questions.
Yeah, I think the second question is very similar to the previous question, and I think my answer would be the same. But in terms of, the thing about settlement of karma is there is a mechanism, and you cannot settle a karmic account with someone unless you get connected. And how you get connected is called attraction. And then you get really tied up. And then it turns around and becomes repulsion. And in the repulsion comes the suffering, which is the settlement of the karma. So whenever you find yourself strongly attracted by someone, wave a red flag at yourself and say, hey, self, here's a karmic account. You have a few options. You can either go through with it and go to heaven and go to hell, where you have less time in heaven and more time in hell, your choice. The other thing you can do is stand back and process the renunciation of getting involved through your spiritual practice and hold yourself together in the face of the attraction, but don't get pulled in. That's another option. You have to be pretty wise and pretty strong and pretty detached to take that option. So not very many people do that. They usually fall flat on their faces and go straight into the problem. And then they say, oh, how do I get out of this? And so that's, people never really learn other than the hard way, right? It's always like that. But when you've done that a few times, you should be a little wise And so if you're still in one piece, you realize, oh, here comes another one. All right, I will just let this one pass by. But you have to be really in your power and clear that you are not going to fall into the trap. And don't fall into the trap, because it is a trap. But in the face of that, there will be very, very strong energies pulling you, which you have to be able to resist. And so if you decide to do that, that's actually the very best way. But, it takes experience and expertise to choose that option and sustain that option, because it can go on for a long time. And then the process of getting out of the trap, you may have to pay. You may have to suffer, but be careful that you do not take revenge, because that will tie you up. And the other thing that you have to be careful of is thinking about the other person. And it's quite difficult to not think about something that's on your mind or someone. So then you need to have a very good practice of yoga and notice what's going on in your mind and deviate your mind to where you want it to go again and again and again, and choose to let that person go and let them be whatever they are, and not get into, you shouldn't do that, why did you do that, you are not okay, blah, blah, blah. Those thoughts tie you in bondage, heavy bondage, because the bondage of thought is quite a big one. So send good wishes. Thank you very much. That was a very important lesson. Appreciate. Have a good life. See you around. Be neutral. That's the way.
Many karma questions are coming.
Mm-hmm.
If your kids are not listening, especially when you have a time-sensitive situation, like they need to get ready to go to school on time, how to not get irritated or feel impatient? Would that be a negative karma?
Well, the thing is, kids are really very clever at getting this sort of arrangement to happen exactly at the time when they have to go to school. And so you have to be cleverer than them, and you have to establish systems. And you have to talk to them and get them to agree to certain ways of doing things. And, to be a good parent, especially in this day and age, is very hard work, because who comes to you as your child is who you have a karmic account with. And then there are also, on the other side of the coin, there are kids who say, how can I handle parents like this? So it's who you get married to is a karmic account, who you have children, who your parents are, all of this, because in the law of karma, you will take birth where you have karmic accounts. And so it's possible to have a count of harmony, where you would take birth to very good people with whom you have very good positive karma. But mostly at this time, people have negative karma. And this is why you have so many dysfunctional families and so difficult, terribly difficult relationships. And people don't have any tools, or they get the wrong tools, or they use the wrong tools. And then it gets really very bad. And so the usefulness of studying meditation and the spiritual knowledge is you do get tools which help you to handle these relationships. And especially you get methods where you can acquire the inner power that's needed to manage distressing, stressful, harsh, difficult, crazy-making relationships. And so you become a hero, because it requires heroic capacity to get through these. And if you say, okay, I will use these situations as opportunities to really develop myself, And I will not try and change anybody because that never worked. But get yourself to be the very best you that you can be under the circumstances. And in that way, you get free from your debt. And then you are free to move on. So that is also there.
Thank you for joining today. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.